record. Okay. For those who join us along the way, I'll kind of try and give an update. I think the page that we're going to be on will be easy for you to find. There should be some charts. It starts out with the words "the three mothers" in your book. It's probably like page 458, something like that. I don't know exactly, but we're right before that. There's a paragraph that starts with the words "Vachar ken zachar." After that, he mentioned. So let's have that. Okay. And then those charts I'm going to put on the screen when we get to them. Okay. I'm going to go slowly because, as I mentioned already a number of times, all this stuff all these things we're about to do now over the next few weeks, some of it is straightforward. Some of it is quite deep and quite out there. We have to can't go through this too quickly. That's why I've had people ask me over the years, I said, well, I want to just catch up. Can I just read the Kuzari and get up to where you are? I said, well, some of it, yeah, but most of it not, because just to read it, you're doing yourself a big disservice. Okay, so I'm going to start reading as follows. Now, we spent some time on talking about the number 10. Remember that for the next, I don't know how many months, we're going to be talking about the Sefer Yetzirah, the book that Avraham Avinu wrote, one of many, that is about creation and the secrets behind creation. And this is where the author, Rabbi Yehuda Levi, is going to be taking us for quite a long journey. We talked about the number 10, and now we're going to talk about another number that he spoke about, which is the number 22. We're going to spend a bit of time on that. It says, Vachar ken, zachar hakaratam be'echut. And then he discussed, he meaning the author of the Sefer Yetzirah, talked about creation in more of a qualitative manner. And he divided the letters of the alphabet, the 22 letters, into three groupings. And this is where we left off. I read and translated this last time, and this is where we left off. Shalosh imot, 3 mothers, Sheva kfulot, 7 doubles, and Shtemes pshutot, 12 plain letters. I'm sure that's all clear to everybody. We don't have to do any commentary. We just continue reading along. Ha, not quite. So what does this mean? So Rabbi Yehuda Levi is going to give us a little bit of a breakdown, and then we're going to look at the charts, and then we're going to hear from Rav Aviner. So let's start off with what he says. V'amar, and he, the author of Sefer Yetzirah, said, Shalosh imot, the 3 mothers are Aleph, Mem, Shin. Those 3 letters are considered the 3 mothers. Aleph, Mem, Shin, Sod Gadol Mufla Mechuseh. It's a very deep, hidden secret about these 3 letters. Shemimenu yotzin avir umayim va'esh shebehen nivra kol. From those 3 letters, Aleph, which is avir or air, Mem, mayim, water, and Esh is the Aleph. The Shin is Esh, is fire, because all 3 of those things are considered the yesod, or the elements of everything that exists in creation. Hence the name Imot. Now, again, for those of you who are just joining us, I'm just in your book, just before your chart, in the paragraph where it says V'achar ken zachar hakaratam, and he's introducing us once again. I say once again because I briefly touched upon it last time. The idea of dividing up the alphabet into 3 distinct groups of letters. The first group is called the Imot, the 3 mothers, and that's Aleph Mem Shin, which he says is a Sod Gadol, is a very deep secret. And we're going to see what exactly that means shortly. V'sam ma'arechet ha'otiyot ha'ele im ma'arechet ha'olam ha'gadol v'ha'katon shu adam v'ma'arechet ha'zman echad. He says like this. We are going to see in these charts in a moment that he overlaid these 3 elements of air, water, and fire onto 3 different areas of existence. One is the universe, one is the small universe, meaning man, and the third being the concept of time. That these 3 Aleph, Mem, Shin, Avir, Mayim, Va'esh, we're going to see how they manifest themselves in these 3 areas. Now, parentheses, why is man called Olam Katan, the small world? I think some of you already know this. And that is, there's a Gemara in Sanhedrin that tells us, Kol hamatzil nefesh achat miYisrael kilu hitzil olam malei or olam umlo'o. Whoever saves one neshama, one person's life, is as if he saved an entire world. And therefore, that's why it says in the Gemara, Adam HaRishon was created Yechidi, he was created alone, to tell us that idea. Because if you say that someone came along and killed Adam after he was created, then you basically wiped out all of humanity. Same thing is true. We look at every single individual as it's a world unto himself, as they say, or herself. And therefore, we referred to Rabbi Dali and in the Sefer HaYetzirah refers to individuals as Olam Katan. So what does this mean? He also says, we're going to get to what this means soon. V'kara otam edim ne'emanim. And he called these three things the trusted witnesses. Olam, v'nefesh, v'shana. He called these three things Olam, nefesh, and shana. The world, the soul, and the ear. That although, and this has been a thesis for him for a while, that although we see things divided into numerous parts, our bodies are made up of things, universe is made up of things, time is made up of things, we would think, chas v'shalom, that there's more than one creator. There's more than one God, but everything emanates from the single God. Now I'm going to read this next. Okay. And in spite of the fact that things vary and they're different one from another, they changed. Their differences are based on their composition, their matter. Mehem elyon, umehem tachton. Some are very lofty things, some are very lowly things. Umehem achur, some things are very murky. Umehem zach, and some are very clear. Now, before you raise your hands up and say, I don't know what the heck he's talking about, I'm out of here, I'm going to go find a shiur I can understand. You got to be patient, because some of these concepts, and especially these next three lines, will be almost unintelligible until we get a little bit more in depth. So let me read to you now the next couple lines and translate them, and then we're going to take a look at these charts. Let me see here. Okay. Even though some of these things that we're talking about, the world, the human being, time, appear to be different from each other. Sorry, I went back. Sorry, continue. I'm starting from Aval. Aval, machmat chonin atzurot v'noten tchunot v'asidur. But as far as whatever we have in the universe comes from the one who gives the form and quality and order, meaning Hashem. The wisdom that went into the creation and fashioning of everything that exists comes from one source, and one overseer, i.e. God, that permeate the world, meaning the universe, human beings, and time. And this is what the Sefer Yetzirah means when he refers to the Olam, the universe, the Olam HaKatan, man, and Zman, time, as the trusted witnesses al achduto yiparach shemo olam v'nefesh v'shana, on the unification or unity of the one God. Okay, first, before we go any further, let's understand this last idea, and then we're going to look at these charts. If I were to tell you, look at a table, you've never seen a table before, you see a table, and I want you to describe it to me, I would ask you, how many parts do you see? So you would say one, more than likely. You see one table. Or if you're a little more intuitive, you say, well, I see about 36. I see the legs, I see the top, I see the screws, I see the felt pads on the bottom. But do you think that there were 36 people that made the table? No, there probably one person could put the table together. That's a very minimalistic view, what I'm trying to explain. He's telling us that the Olam, the Nefesh, and the Shana stand as witnesses that although they are divisible and have many parts, both moving and non-moving, they all emanate from the same Hashem. And the reason he has to do this in Sefer Yetzirah and also bring this in the fourth essay of the Kuzari is because also part of this whole concept was, especially by Avram Avinu, was lishlol, to negate that which the world of polytheism believed, which was that there are many gods. And also part of the goal of Kuzari is to focus on Yahadut, Judaism, and its beliefs, and lishlol, to negate those of the others. Now, Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to put on the screen what you have in your book. We're going to take a look at this. You could take a look in your book. You can look on the screen, whatever you want. Okay. The three mothers. Now, the chart works in such a way that every single chart has the three words on the left side: the universe, the soul, and the year. It's in your book in Hebrew and it's in English. I'm just going to do it in English right now. So the three mothers, how they break down in the universe, soul, and year. The seven doubles, how they break down to universe, soul, and year. And then when we get to the next chart, which is the 12 regular letters, how they break down also in universe, soul, and year. What does this mean, though? What is it we're looking at? So if I were to say to you, give me an example of 5 things that have screws in them. So you might say a table, chairs, a cabinet, TV. I don't know why that popped in my head. A bunch of things. So there are things that are common in that they find in, but they also can find. If I ask you, what do you have that contains oxygen? What do you have that contains? Okay. So these are what these charts say. The three mothers are as follows: Aleph, Mem, Shin across the top. Those 3 letters are the source for everything that exists in the way we're looking at it today. In the universe, the Aleph is air, the Mem is water. This works better in Hebrew, which you can look at on your chart because we'll see that. And the Shin represents fire. That's in the universe. In the soul, meaning our bodies, the Aleph is the chest, the Mem is the stomach, and the Shin is the head. And the year is, what does it mean, temperance? It has to do with the idea of the Hebrew, it's rivaya, which is saturation of the air. And also the Mem is in the year is cold, and Shin is heat. Now, as we go through some of this, when we get into Rav Aviner's commentary, we'll understand a little bit more. The truth is, to really understand the 3 mothers, the 7 doubles, and the 12 singles, you need many, many months of deep study of Sefer Yetzirah, which is not our goal here, but we will get into some of it. Now, what are the 7 doubles? In Hebrew, with the exception of Resh, and you'll see there's actually a footnote on the Resh. There's a little, I think, I or a 1, whatever it is. It doesn't apply today, and we're going to see how some of these other things won't apply, but the Resh never has a dagesh. What the 7 doubles are the letters in Hebrew, beged kefet, but in this case with the Resh also, that can have a dagesh or dot. So it's a bet or a vet. A gimel can have a gimel with a dot, without a dot. A daled can have a dot in it. A kaf and a chaf, a pei and a fei, and a taf and a tafo, a saf, if you learned it like that. The Resh is not really fit into this mold, although in that time period for Hebrew it did. That's its own story. Rav Aviner will touch upon it. So what are these? I'm going to actually take a look in the Hebrew and translate along the way in the English. If you look down the left side, you'll see, again, universe, soul, and year, how the 7 doubles apply. In the universe, they are this at that time period, they were the 7 known planetary items. There was Shabtai, Saturn, Tzedek, Jupiter, Mars, Madin, which is, by the way, the same names today. The Chama, the sun, Noga, Venus, Kochav, Mercury, Levana, the moon. Okay. It's on there here in Hebrew also. I didn't realize that it's transliterated. Okay. So first of all, what about the other planets? Right. So just as an aside, I looked it up. Uranus wasn't discovered till 1781. Neptune in 1846, and Pluto, which became a planet, became not a planet, became a planet again, as far as I know, 1930. So that's why these 3 planets don't appear in the chart. But so he chose the 7 known planetary items at that point and said that the letters Bet, Gimel, Dal, Kaf, Pei, Resh, Tav were applied to those planets or other things in the sky. What about the Nefesh? We have Chochma, Osher, Memshala, Chaim, Chen, Zera, and Shalom. As you see on your screen, wisdom, wealth, rulership, life, grace, progeny, and peace. The last grouping would have to do with the year or time. Shabbat, Chamishi, Shlishi, Rishon, Shishi, Revi'i, Sheni. These letters are how they correspond because the Bet in Shabbat, the Gimel in Yom Chamishi, I don't know. But again, if you go into depth in all these, you'll be able to understand the significance of each more. We're going to just touch on some of them. The 12 regulars. Now, this one is something we're probably a little bit more familiar with. Start with the bottom of the list, which is the year. There are 12 months in the year. The 12 regulars are the 12 letters of the alphabet, which are not included in Aleph Mem Shin, and are not of the doubles. So the 12 months of the year. The top row are the 12, what we call the zodiacal signs, which the Gemara deals with extensively. People say, oh, we don't believe in zodiac and stars and stuff. We do have a level of belief in some of that. We're not talking about a person's horoscope. I talked about this once before. I think I gave you a sub-shear here in Kuzari. We don't believe in the concept of horoscopes, but we do believe that there's some power that Hashem has invested in the various zodiac signs in the sky of the stars, the star arrangement for various things. The Gemara discusses that in multiple places. The middle grouping I'll go through is less obvious to us. There are 12 different parts of the soul that affect various organs of the body: the organ of sight, organ of hearing, organ of smelling, speech, taste, sex, doing, moving, thinking, anger, laughter, and sleep. Now, when you think about it, I just want to kind of pause here for a minute. You think about it, that the soul, the nefesh is how we're translating it, doesn't really have a lot to do with some of these things you would think. I can understand thinking. I can understand maybe anger, maybe laughter, but the others might be hard to say. What is the connection to soul? So without getting too much into depth here, because we will get into a lot of depth on this in about 2 years, when we hit this point in Tanya, Bezrat Hashem, we'll see. What's it?
Every time you sleep, your soul leaves you and then comes back when you wake up.
Okay, so number one, that's true. Number two, the crazy thing is that when I was learning Tanya this morning, that's exactly the topic: the soul leaving the body, coming back to the body. So that's kind of creepy. And number three, there is a definite correlation between a person's neshama, at least one of their neshamot, which is another issue, and all these different organs of the body. So we'll get to that. So the number, what's that?
Sorry to creep you out.
Oh, no, it's fine. It's fine. I have no problem being creeped out. I love this stuff. I have mentioned on numerous occasions that it happens to me daily, where what I read, learn, discuss. We had something we were talking about on the Shabbat table last week or 2 weeks ago that had absolutely no connection to anything. I quoted something, I think, from Shakespeare. Yeah, I quoted something from Shakespeare. Boil, toil, and trouble. All of a sudden, I opened up the Torah tidbits, and there was that quote in there. There was two things that same day. There was a quote had to do with Gilligan's Island we talked about. Don't ask how that came up. Don't even ask. And that was a side comment also in Torah tidbits. The same. So these things happen to me all the time, especially learning Parshat Shavua, learning whatever it might be. Just keep your eyes open. It happens to you too. You may not realize it. Okay. So this is the famous question asked by Chazal. What you talking about, Willis? What is going on here? I mean, really, come on. So let's take a look now in Rav Aviner's commentary. We're going to spend some time. We're not going to get back to the text today. We're going to spend some time. And when we get back to the text, we're going to do literally one line if we get to it. We're going to take a look starting on page 206, which is in the top of the page where it starts with the words et kaf beta otiyot. Let's try and start making a little bit of sense of what is being said here. Okay. Et kafbet, if you don't have it, you can follow along, I'll translate. Et kafbet otiyot, mechalek mechaber sefer yetzira leshalosh ma'archot. The 22 letters of the alphabet, the author of Sefer Yetzirah divides into 3 systems. Aleph mem shin. Shalosh otiyot sheim klaliot. 3 letters that are general or inclusive. Me'en em b'chol hashar. Ki'ilu, they're the mothers of all the rest. Bet, beged kefet, and I specifically skipped the resh, but because in modern here we just refer to beged kefet, it has to do with the geshim, the dots in the letters, but I will include the resh right now, and he'll discuss why that's in there. Sheva kfulot, 7 doubles. Otiyot sheish lahem shtei tzurot higui. 7 letters that have 2 different ways to pronounce them. Now you might say a gimel is a gimel is a gimel, and a dalet is a dalet is a dalet with a dagesh or not. Then if you would say that, you would be wrong. I'll come back to that in a minute. Digusha ubilti digusha. They refer to letters that have a dot and don't. Otiot ba'alot shtei panim, letters that are two different perspectives, two different faces, two different facets is probably the best word. So just as a side note, what does this mean? That a gimel and a daled with a dot in them have two different sounds. So for those of you who are familiar either with the current way Temanim pronounce Hebrew, when davening especially, or Hebrew how it was pronounced a long, long time ago, we made a distinction between the gimel, a hard gimel and a soft gimel, which is the gimel with the dagesh without. It could be a gimel, and I'm not talking about the chupchik either. That the dalid was more like a th sound, a th sound, which is one of the reasons that it says that when a person says Shema, they say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, and we talked about this a short time ago, that you marichin at the dalid, you elongate the dalid. Well, it's hard to do, right? So their opinions that meant this is it's a chat. So good luck with that. And if this were a class on Dikduk, which Baruch Hashem it's not, I would go into the other stuff, but just take my word for it. These are the 7 doubles. Gimel, the third possibility. Kol shara otiot, all the other letters. Shtemesrei pshutot, 12 plain letters. Now he's going to start to explain. Ata yachel levaer inyanam bifrotot. Now we're going to start to explain details about these items, and we're going to start with the first system, which was the emesh, aleph mem shin, which is the emot. Why refers to emot and not imahot? I have to see. I don't know. Indeed, this is in fact a very deep, hidden secret. Aleph is avir, afar. Mem is mayim. Shin is esh. Shloshet halalu. These 3 items are the 3 main powers in existence. Zohi hafizika shel Aristo. This is the physics of Aristotle. Aristo lo hikir et 92 hayesodot hachimiyim shel metziut. He was not aware of the large amount of if you're familiar with the periodic table of elements, he did not know about all the elements. Nor did he obviously know about atoms and neutrons and protons and other things like that. Leshitato, according to his approach, the way Aristotle approached the concept of physics was that everything that existed was made up of either one or a combination of esh, mayim, and avir. And avir in this case also means afar, not just air, but it means earth. So earth, wind, and fire, which sounds like a great name for a band. Maybe I should start one like that. Derech mashal, for example, agvania, a tomato, hiarakava shel afar, mutzak, and mayim, nozel, is made up of something solid, which is earth, and water, liquid. Adim, which is steam. Heimarakava shel avir umayim is a combination of both water and air. Lichora zoi fizika sherka keklipat hashum. שהרי כל ילד יודע שהדים ניתן להפוך למים, ומים לאדים, ומים לקרח, ואוויר לנוזל. This is like every kid knows this kind of stuff, that water can become steam, that steam can become water, water can become ice. וכן ניתן להפוך CO2 למוצק, בקור מסוים. You also know that we can change carbon dioxide into solid at a certain temperature. Skip the parentheses. אמנם אנו רואים שספר יצירה ישתמש במושגיו של אריסטו, he starts off and he's going to use this next paragraph to say, wait a minute. We're talking about a time period where the knowledge of science was obviously as forward thinking as it could possibly be then, but now it's ancient. Literally, it's ancient. So how do we use today the ideas they had then to explain all this stuff? So that's what he's going to explain to us now. Now, before he's going to explain, he needs to explain. And they say that a person who gets up to speak is supposed to tell them what you're going to tell them, then you tell them what you told them. So it's kind of what he's doing here. In a sense, he's giving us a little bit of background before we jump on like, wait a minute, something doesn't make sense because there's so many more parts and so many more elements. Next paragraph. Mikan lomdim. From here we learn that an author always uses the concepts known to his current generation. We have to keep in mind, he said, what is the goal of Sefer Yetzirah? It's not to teach us physics. Okay. Lahadgamat varav, in order to give like examples of his ideas or words. They have to use, the Sefer Yetzirah needed to use examples of what was known at their time in their language. And for our part, the Fizika Batzmano. Same happened with Rambam when he wrote his Sefer Moreh Nevuchim, the guide for the perplexed. He used Aristotelian ideas to also enlighten, to make comments on his own work. Theoretically, based on current modern physics, we would be able to take all of the Aristotelian physics and just toss it out the window, because it really does not, it's only like a small portion of what we know. But what we do want to make use of is the idea of physics, of how we take apart, how we almost excise and lenateach, to put into pieces mitziut, what's out there. In other words, if I were to have a pen, which obviously wouldn't have existed in the year whatever, 1000 BCE, so I can divide it and see the different parts there are. I can see what it's made out of. Obviously, plastic didn't exist. It's literally very modern product. But if I take it apart today, it's no different than my taking it apart then. I may identify it differently. I may have more information, but I'm still taking it apart. He says that's what our goal is here: to take things apart, how they in nature, in existence. The kadmonenu, right after the bolded words, to those who came before us in ancient times, they had the tools they had at their time. Sheniku mayim, afar, esh, avir. They had water, earth, fire, wind. Elu v'sachakol shemot umilim. All they really are just words or nouns. V'al lanu lechapes behem omek. And we don't need to look in great depth to that. Meaning the point here is not the depth of the word mayim or the depth of the word esh, but rather the ideas that they give us. Hadavar domeh lebitui shaka'ah shimsho shel ploni. He says, I'm going to give you an example. There's an expression in Hebrew. It's more biblical, not biblical, like Tanaic Hebrew, found in the Gemara, that so-and-so's sun has set, meaning they die. Everyone knows when you say so-and-so's sun has set, it is only a militza, it's only an expression. No one has their own private sun. So too, when we say sunset, everyone knows the sun doesn't actually set, but it's because the earth is turning on its axis. So the idea he's telling us is, to start off, let's not get hung up on the words themselves. Let's not get hung up on the fact that we know today scientifically and in physics much more than we did back then. Right now, we're using these things that the Kuzari has brought in the name of Sefer Yetzirah as examples of how to understand Hashem, the one Hashem, in the multiplicity of what exists in the world. Continue next page 207. We're going to just read the top paragraph. So too, Maharal wrote in his book Derech Chaim, he repeats multiple times the topic of the three. For example, if you never noticed, the number 3 appears multiple times when you learn the statements of Chachamenu Zichronim Livracha. For those of you who've gone through Masechet Avot, or also known as Pirkei Avot, you'll know that the number 3 appears all the time. He says 3 things. There's 3 things, constant 3. The number 3 is constant because it's considered the imot, the mothers of all these ideas that are out there. V'sham maskir et Sefer Yetzirah, shekemoshi sodot haolam heim shlosha. Just like the elements of the world are 3 basic elements. v'nikru b'shem emesh, and are known as emesh, mayim, avir, esh. Kach l'chol hadracha musarit b'metziut yesh shlosha chalakim. So too, in ethical teachings, there are three parts: mutzakim, nozlim, gazim. There are three parts. We know this: liquid, solid, and gas. Oh, sorry, I didn't say it in the right order: solid, liquid, and gas. Hainu shlosha matzavei tzvira. Shlosha ufanim shonim shel hofaot hametziut hafizikalit. There are three ways of three dimensions in physics. Al pi zeh nitan lechalek ulenatech et hahavaya. Through this idea of three, we can then take apart existence, et hameshushaluyut shememetziut, the three-part idea of existence. Now, I don't know if any of you have learned Masechet Shabbat, but some of you may have heard of this in some speech or other quoted on Shavuot, because the Gemara in Masechet Shabbat discusses Shavuot, the giving of the Torah, and it discusses the date on which the Torah was given, because we know that it's not in the Torah. And it ends up that whole section in the Gemara with a very interesting phrase using the number 3. It says as follows: Baruch Shanatan Lanu Torah Meshuleshet. Baruch Hashem, who gave us the three-part Torah, meaning Torah, Nevi'im, Ketuvim. Al Yedei Shlishi, through a third person, meaning Moshe Rabbeinu. He was the third child. La'am Meshulash, to a people that's divided into threes: Kohanim, Levi'im, Yisraelim. B'yom Shlishi, on the third day, not the third day of the month, but the third day after the men and women separated from each other. B'chodesh HaShlishi, in the third month of the year. So it's Amtlita, it's in Aramaic in the Gemara. He quoted it here in Hebrew. That the idea is that we don't necessarily even realize how the number 3 works so deeply into our entire Jewish world. Moshe being a third, the Torah is 3 parts, we are a 3-part nation. Again, to indicate to us the number 3, the Aleph Mem Shin, the beginning of all of existence in the Jewish people. Turn to the next page, please, and go to 208, where it says Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. And we're wondering if any of you, just curious, if any one of you, while we were talking about this number, thought of this idea, Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. Anybody happen to think of it? Come and pop into your head? Nope? Okay. Well, now it's going to pop into your head. Here you go. Allow me to pop in. Tov. Yeshnam shlosha kavim rashim. There are 3 main paths or lines. Shemechalkim et ha'ensof l'shalosh ma'arachot. Now, even if you don't follow exactly what he's going to tell us here, hold on a second. Kind of hang on, because it'll become a little bit clearer. The Gemara tells us, that I just quoted, that the Gemara says that we received a 3-part Torah, Torah Nevi'im Ketuvim, La'am Meshulash, to a 3-part people, Kohanim, Levi'im, Yisraelim, Chodesh HaShlishi, in the 3rd month, Chodesh Sivan, Ayidei Shlishi, by the 3rd child, meaning Moshe, Shu Shlishi Le'imo. Hakol Mofia Etzlenu B'Tavnit Meshulash. Everything appears to us to be, or appears as a pattern of 3. B'chein Pirkei Avot. Banui al Tavnit Meshuleshet. So too, Pirkei Avot is based on a framework of 3. Shalosh Memrot, 3 phrases, 3 statements, hanemarot binyan echad, that are said in relation to one topic. Ubonot biyachad inyan shalem, and together all 3 of those make up one piece. V'tamida adgasha, always the stress is, for example, al shlosha dvarim ha'olam hamed. The world exists on 3 things. Now, when you start to get into this, what started off as something very esoteric, the 3s, the 7s, the 12s, the doubles, this, when you start to break it down and start looking just nikudati, very pinpoint on something, we look at the number 3 now, which is where we're concentrating. 10 we left behind. We already dealt with 10. And we realize how the 3 really permeates our lives. Whether it's, as the Gemara mentions the 3, now we also say that the world exists on 3 things. And Pirkei Avot gives a couple different versions to that. Torah, Avodah, Gemilut Chasadim, there's others you can look up, V'chadomeh. The Maharal explained in many places in Derech Chaim, the concept of the 3. Hadavar hipucho ha'emtza, the item, the opposite of the item, and the middle. And the middle connects the 2 extremes. Kodem lehem umitgala mitocham. Rabbeinu Rav Tzvi Yehuda, Rav Kook. Masbir b'mkom, this is the sun. Masbir b'mkomot rabim, explains in many places. Shehitgalut haborei b'nivraim mitbatat b'kedusha mishuleshet. That Hashem's revelation to humans happened in a three-strand way. Mikora b'navi Yeshayahu, kadosh, kadosh, kadosh. Hu mitparesh b'targum Yonatan Sham. We know, and we say this in Uva L'Tzion. We say kadosh, 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 and we explain each one of those kadoshes. Aleph, kadish bishmaya, bishmei maroma ila abed shchinte, hakdusha shmimit hamuchletet, the solid, the perfect heavenly kedusha. Kadish al arak ovad vurte, zo kedusha shalanu kan ba'aretz. This is the land, kedusha of Eretz Yisrael. Kedoshin to you, ki kadosh ani Hashem lokechem, or it's the concept of us being holy. And the third kadosh is kadish la'alam u'me'al maya. Hakol mehavesh lemut achat. Everything, Hashem's existence combines it to one perfection. Hakdusha mekifa hakol. Kedusha surrounds everything. How? Because Hashem is kadosh, and if Hashem is everywhere, therefore everything is surrounded by kedusha. Mishmei meromim ad tachtiyot haaretz, from the heavenly heavens to the very bottom of the earth. Ba'achdut achad shel Hashem echad u'shmo echad. Afilu ribono shel olam kiviyachol kadosh b'shalot ma'achot. And Hashem Himself even is kiviyachol, a system of three kadosh. Mishalshim l'chad kedusha. Chemofia. Let me finish the paragraph, and I'm going to make a couple of comments. Amofia. So too, the concept of three appears when it comes to time. We have Shalosh Regalim. We have the three holidays of Pesach, Shavuot, Sukkot. But we know that the Goyim distorted this concept, Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. And they took the true sense of the meaning of the three of Kedusha, and they took it to mean the idea of the Trinity. The Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh to them became the Trinity. And if I remember, I'm going to go to show you something amazing. I forgot to put it on this to download it. Next page, last couple lines. Obviously, we're not talking about that. אנו מבינים שהקדושה האלוקית, זרם החיים האלוקיים, במציאות קיימות העולם, הם בתבנית משולשת. I'm not going to translate, but again, he just restates that everything that is in existence has somehow intertwined into it the number three. Now, some of you are familiar with the pasuk in Mishlei, in Kohelet. The three-stranded thread will not easily come apart. I'll try to remember next week to mention about that. I want to find something here before. Sign. I forgot to get this before. Kadosh. See if I find images. Please tell you find it right away. Okay, if I don't find it right away, I don't see it. Okay, let me come back to you all. There is, and I saw it myself, there is I think it's bronze sculpture in some, I'm trying to remember where it was. It might have been in Poland. Some of you may have seen this yourselves or be familiar with it. There's like an arch. It says Kadosh, 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 but it's over crosses, and it's meant to be the concept of the Trinity. So what Rav Aviner is mentioning here about the taking of the concept of the number three and using it in a different way is very boled, very pronounced in this particular sculpture. I'll try and send a picture out. I will send Bezat Hashem. I'll send a picture. We're not going to continue now. He's just touched on the surface. And if you want to take one thing away from this, he's trying to make this point that the Aleph Mem Shin, the number three, are called the Imot because one way or another, everything that exists, including our own people, our Torah, everything else somehow connects to number three. That's the bottom line for this. You're not going to be able to grasp all the concepts here, nor in the following pages, without really learning Sefer Yetzirah. Then you can do on your own time if you have the chance. Next week, we're going to do a little bit more on Shalosh, and then we're going to move into the number 7, Bezrat Hashem. I'll try and make as much sense of it as I can. In the meantime, your homework is to look at life. Think about things in this world that we didn't mention that have the number 3 in them, the number 7, the number 12? Is it just happenstance there are 12 Shvatim? No. By the way, when they decided how many apostles there were going to be, they got that from us also, the number 12 based on the 12 tribes of the Jews. But the number 12, the number 3, the number 7, think about that in your own lives. And when you see things in the store, in the street, in the sky, see what you can come up with. In the meantime, I'll look for that sculpture and send it out. Have a wonderful day, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Welcome.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're welcome.
Thank you.